Okay, so trying to keep up with absolutely everything happening across TV, film, global media, it can be a lot, right?
Oh, yeah. It's a lot to keep track of for sure.
You've sent us a ton of stuff, and that's what we do here on the Deep Dive. We cut through all of that noise and find those interesting nuggets.
And we're going to try to give you all the insights that you need to feel like you're totally caught up without getting bogged down in the details.
Exactly. We're going to look at everything from these big international productions and, the wild world of streaming.
To the rise of AI in Hollywood.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
And, of course, what's coming out of all these festivals and markets, it's all connected. We're going to see how.
Let's do it.
So let's dive right in.
Let's dive in.
With some of these international productions and collaborations, it's amazing to see how many projects are truly global these days.
Right.
I mean, Joanne Froggatt from Downton Abbey is starring in this Guy Ritchie film Mobland on Paramount Plus.
Oh, yeah.
With Tom Hardy, Pierce Brosnan, Helen Mirren.
It's a great cast.
Huge stars. And it's Ritchie bringing his signature style to a 10-episode series. It's coming up very, very soon. So.
Well, yeah, and what I think is fascinating about that is just the speed at which these streaming series are being produced and released, 10 episodes, and it's launching so quickly. It shows you how much of a demand there is from these streaming platforms for content. And when you have people like Guy Ritchie, well-established film directors working in the space, it really does kind of signal a convergence between traditional film and television production.
Yeah, it's all blending together, absolutely. And on a different international note, the news about Village Roadshow Australia being financially independent, right, despite its U.S. parent company filing for bankruptcy. That was very interesting to see. So for anyone listening in Australia, it looks like those cinema trips and theme parks visits are safe.
Yeah, they're safe. They're fine. And I think it really illustrates how these big international media companies are all interconnected in very complex and often kind of surprisingly independent ways.
Yeah.
Financial restructuring in one part of the world doesn't necessarily mean disruption somewhere else, which is a key takeaway there.
Yeah, so zooming in on Europe, there are apparently 10 key trends that are really shaping the film and TV industries there.
Yeah.
Increased investment in local content by streamers. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And the consolidation of production companies. I mean, that also feels like a natural consequence. But the growing influence of AI, that's huge. And that's something we're seeing across the board.
Absolutely. And along with AI, we're also seeing that the European production landscape is grappling with these rising costs due to inflation and, budgets are being impacted. So we're seeing film festival markets having to kind of adapt to a changing industry. Tax incentives are being adjusted to attract production, and we're seeing co-productions increasing a lot.
Makes sense.
As a way to share costs and reach a wider audience. And then we're seeing a really big push for sustainability.
Yes, and that's certainly a positive development there. Now, this report about UK talent agents facing tougher competition from the U.S. and dealing with rising talent fees, I mean, it feels like a constant battle to secure and retain talent in the global marketplace.
It is, and it really begs the question, what is the role of these local talent agencies going to be when talent can be scouted and managed from anywhere in the world? And that's why we're seeing agencies offering a broader range of services. And co-agenting is becoming a thing. It's about versatility, really, in this hyper-competitive environment.
And speaking of global players, Blue Ant seems to have some pretty significant expansion plans following that Boat Rocker deal. They're focused on growing their global channels like Love Nature.
Right.
They're looking at unscripted productions. They're thinking about acquiring even more libraries and streaming channels in North America and in Europe. So.
Yeah, and I think that this is really interesting because it aligns with the ongoing demand for, this more niche specialized content.
Right.
And Blue Ant is really recognizing the inherent value of owning intellectual property. And that's really the creative works themselves. So they want to expand the reach of their channels because by having more content, they have more negotiating power and they can connect directly with their target audiences.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now moving over to France.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to see Patrick Bruel making his TV debut.
Yeah.
In a spy thriller called State of Alert.
Yeah.
Is based on a novel.
Oh, cool.
About an Israeli spy and a French anti-terrorism cop. So you can already see.
Classic international intrigue.
Exactly. And of course, Bruel is a massive star in France. So.
Oh, yeah.
But the core premise of this international espionage, it has inherent appeal.
Oh, yeah.
Beyond just French viewers.
Definitely. And I think these types of cross-cultural narratives are becoming increasingly appealing to global audiences because they want stories that are not limited by national borders.
It makes sense. And sticking with Europe, the collaboration between the BBC and ZDF on Honey sounds really fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a Cold War romantic comedy thriller set in 1980s East Berlin. You've got an MI6 agent caught in the love triangle with a CIA operative and a Stasi officer.
Oh, my goodness.
That's
a recipe for some drama.
It's a lot going on.
And some laughs.
It is.
That's cool.
And that's what makes it so interesting, right? You've got the tension of a spy thriller and then the lighter touch of a romantic comedy.
A really interesting mix.
And then the backdrop of 1980s East Berlin during the Cold War.
We can't go wrong.
So much potential.
Yeah.
Now, these alliances that are being formed, like the European Alliance and New Eight, that were presented at Series Mania.
Right.
This feels like a direct response to the dominance of these global streaming platforms.
Oh, yeah.
It's like they're saying, okay, we need to pool our resources.
Right.
We need to work together and create these high-end dramas that are really going to resonate with our audiences.
Exactly. And I think that's a smart move by these European broadcasters because it ensures that they remain relevant in the face of these global giants. And by working together, they can finance and produce larger scale and higher quality productions.
Absolutely.
That really resonate with local audiences in ways that perhaps a global streamer might not prioritize.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about streaming and platforms because the latest viewing figures out of the U.S. show that YouTube is still a dominant force in overall TV viewing.
Wow.
And that's kind of surprising when you think about how much buzz there is around Netflix and all the others. 9.3% of total TV viewing in February.
That's huge.
That's a big chunk.
Yeah, and it's really remarkable how YouTube has managed to not just stay relevant, but evolve.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just short-form user-generated content anymore. It's long-form videos.
Right.
It's about personalities connecting with audiences across demographics.
It's a force.
Yeah.
And it sounds like YouTube might also be about to really shake things up in the podcasting world as well with these reported changes to their ad platform.
Really?
They're talking about allowing direct RSS feed uploads and monetization. So that could be a challenge for Spotify and Apple.
This could be a game changer. And I think by streamlining the process for creators and by leveraging their existing advertising infrastructure, YouTube could become a really attractive platform for podcasters.
Yeah.
Because they're offering direct monetization and a huge potential audience.
Yeah, so Spotify and Apple definitely need to pay attention to this.
They do.
There's also been a pretty notable executive move at Samsung TV Plus. Jennifer Batty stepping down as content director.
Right.
And she was very influential in expanding that platform's global content offerings and partnerships. So that's a big departure. And for anyone who isn't familiar, Samsung TV Plus is a FAST platform.
And FAST T stands for?
Yeah, it stands for Free Ad-Supported Streaming Television. So basically, it's free linear streaming channels that are supported by ads.
Ah, okay.
Kind of like traditional broadcast TV, but delivered digitally.
Gotcha.
And these fast channels are growing fast.
Well, that makes sense.
Pun intended. But Batty's departure really shows just how dynamic and competitive that market has become.
Absolutely. I mean, as these fast platforms gain traction and viewers, we're likely to see more strategic executive moves like this as companies figure out their approaches to content acquisition and distribution.
Makes sense. Okay, so some familiar faces are coming back to our screens. John Lithgow and Jimmy Smits are apparently reprising their roles in the Dexter Original Sin prequel series on Paramount+.
Really?
And it sounds like it can be through flash forwards, which is very interesting, and Christian Slater has been cast as a younger Harry Morgan.
Oh, wow.
It's intriguing.
It is, and I think this whole idea of bringing back well-known characters is a smart strategy for studios because it allows them to capitalize on those existing fan bases.
Right.
And using things like flash forwards allows them to weave in those familiar faces while still exploring the earlier timelines of the story.
Yeah, it's a good mix of the familiar and the new. And for fans of The Handmaid's Tale, Rowan Blanchard is joining the cast of The Testaments on Hulu.
Oh.
And she's playing Becca, who's one of the central young women in the story, which is set about 15 years after the events of The Handmaid's Tale.
Oh, okay.
And it's a big expansion of that world. Yeah. And it gives them an opportunity to delve deeper into the impacts of Gilead and introduce a new generation of characters.
Yeah, and I think that's what's so interesting about this series is that it's going to explore the long-term societal impacts of that regime.
Right.
And it will introduce these new characters and their perspectives within that setting.
Yeah, okay, so AI in Hollywood It's everywhere the headlines.
It is everywhere.
It's causing so much debate. The buzz around OpenAI's Sora tool is pretty intense. It can create hyper-realistic videos.
It's amazing.
And studios are really paying attention to this because it has the potential to completely transform production.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the advancements in AI video generation are so remarkable, and the level of realism that we're seeing with tools like Sora, they're forcing studios and creative professionals to really think carefully about what this all means and what the implications are going to be.
And what about the implications for jobs?
Well, that's a big question mark.
It is.
And we have these complex legal frameworks around copyright and the potential impact on human employment in the creative industries.
Yeah.
These are all massive hurdles that need to be addressed, but at the same time, studios are very interested in exploring the ways that AI could be used to streamline production.
That makes sense. And it's not just Sora, right?
Right.
Generative AI, or Gen AI as they call it, has so much potential in Hollywood.
It does.
But it really depends on so many different factors, how the legal challenges play out the speed of technological development, and I think, crucially, how creative talent actually responds to it. Do they embrace it? Do they reject it?
Do they fight it?
It's a big one.
Yeah.
But the fact that AI could potentially lower the cost of producing content and maybe even empower talent in new ways, that's really interesting.
It's really interesting, and it kind of raises the question that if the cost of content creation comes down through AI, could that lead to a democratization of filmmaking? Where, independent creators could bring their visions to life without needing
the big budgets.
The big budgets.
Right.
It's an interesting thought.
It is.
But of course, the industry needs to very carefully navigate the ethical and economic considerations surrounding AI to ensure a fair and sustainable future for everyone.
Right. And the fact that AI is now being used to allow fans to remix existing intellectual property or IP in new ways. This is also really interesting.
It is.
Because it could lead to some amazing fan-generated content.
Yeah.
But it also has some risks for studios because they could overextend their franchises or dilute their brand.
Yeah, you don't want to water down the brand.
You don't. And figuring out the legal side of all of this AI-generated fan content, that's a whole other story.
We are in uncharted territory here.
We are.
And I think the existing legal frameworks are going to have to adapt quite a bit to this new reality.
Yeah, they are so, on a completely different note, this film, Warfare.
Yeah.
The level of preparation that cast went through is incredible.
I know, I read about that.
3 weeks of boot camp. They shaved their heads. They did these intense bonding exercises.
Wow.
And this is all to achieve this realism for a film that's based on a real Battle of Ramadi incident from 2006. And they even used live sensory elements on set.
Oh, wow.
It's remarkable.
It is. And this is all to accurately portray the experiences of individuals who live through these events. And I think that deep commitment to authenticity on the part of filmmakers shows their dedication to respectfully and accurately portraying these experiences.
Right. And it probably also helped the actors deliver those believable performances.
Oh, for sure.
Now, the concert-style release strategy that they used for that Led Zeppelin documentary, Becoming Led Zeppelin, that seems to have worked really well for them.
Oh, really?
They made over $10 million at the box office, and Led Zeppelin songs started climbing back up the charts.
Wow. So
that's the power of nostalgia.
It is. Yeah.
It really is.
And they really eventurized it.
They did. They had those teaser trailers. They did the IMAX screenings, the advanced ticket sales. They had endorsements from musicians.
Smart.
This is a whole campaign, and it worked.
It did.
Now, this new BBC series, Reunion, it's a revenge thriller, but it features a deaf protagonist. And it's going to blend British Sign Language with spoken English.
Oh, wow.
So it's a real step forward, I think, in terms of representation.
Yeah, and it's really important to have this kind of bilingual storytelling because it promotes inclusivity in the entertainment industry.
Right.
And it also offers a richer and more nuanced viewing experience for all audiences.
Yeah, and by incorporating British Sign Language as a core part of the narrative, they're really kind of breaking down those barriers and offering a new perspective on a classic genre.
Absolutely.
Now, over at Series Mania, Sally Wainwright, she's the creator behind Happy Valley. She debuted her new project, Riot Women.
Oh, I heard about that.
Yeah, so it's a dramedy about a group of menopausal women who decide to form a punk band, and the actors actually learn to play their instruments.
Really?
And they co-wrote some of the songs.
Wow.
So it's got that extra layer of authenticity.
Yeah, I love that commitment to authenticity.
And Sally Wainwright is amazing.
Oh, she's incredible. She's got a great track record.
She does.
And that premise is just inherently engaging. And I think the fact that the actors learned to play and contributed to the songwriting process just shows a commitment to really capturing that spirit of punk rock.
Yeah, it sounds like a fun show. Okay, so this Camden Film Quarter project in London, that was recently approved. That sounds like a huge boost for the UK's screen sector.
Yeah, it's going to be great for them. And it's going to have film production facilities, affordable housing, and community spaces all in one place.
Yeah, it's really thinking about the big picture.
It is. And it's really important to have that kind of integrated infrastructure if you want to foster a thriving film and television industry.
Right.
Because it will attract talent and keep talent there as well.
Yeah, it creates a whole ecosystem. And then there's this documentary about Haley Welch, the Hawk Tuah girl from that viral video.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, it's in development, and it's going to explore viral fame and meme culture, which feels really relevant right now.
Oh, absolutely. It's so relevant because these internet memes, they spread so quickly, and it's fascinating to see how they impact culture. And I think this project will probably explore the mechanics of how things go viral.
Yeah.
And what it actually means for the people involved.
Right. Because there's a real human side to all of that.
There is, for sure.
Okay, so Laia Costa has joined the cast of that upcoming Mummy reboot at Universal.
Right.
It's being directed by Lee Cronin. And they're going for a darker, more mythological tone.
Interesting.
Yeah, it could be a really interesting take on a classic monster movie.
Yeah, and I think when you're rebooting something like The Mummy, which is so iconic, you have to find that balance between paying homage to the original,
right,
but also bringing something new to make it feel fresh.
Right, otherwise why bother? And a darker, more mythological approach, I think, could really make it stand out.
Yeah, and appeal to maybe a slightly different audience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for fans of Malcolm in the Middle, there's a revival series in the works.
What?
Most of the original cast is expected to come back, but the character of Dewey is going to be recast.
Interesting.
I know, and I'm curious to see what the grown-up versions of those characters will be like.
Me too. I mean, revivals really tap into that powerful sense of nostalgia.
Right.
But it's also a chance to explore how the characters have changed over time.
Yeah, and that recasting of Dewey that suggests a shift in that family dynamic.
Yeah, it could be really interesting to see how they handle that.
Yeah, now Apple TV Plus has a new drama called The Dealer.
Okay.
Starring Jessica Chastain and Adam Driver.
Wow.
And it's set in the world of high-end art.
Oh, wow. That sounds good.
So it's going to explore themes of power and class.
That's a fascinating world to set it in.
And with those two actors, it's sure to be good.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure it will be.
So Franco Nero, he's starring in an upcoming Australian mafia drama called The Dons.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting cross-cultural casting choice.
It is. And I think Franco Nero brings a lot of weight to the crime genre.
He does.
Especially with his Italian cinema background.
Right.
And setting a mafia story in Australia, it gives a fresh perspective.
On those familiar themes.
Exactly.
Okay, so Imagine Documentaries is producing a docuseries called Baby Driver, the first step to F1.
Oh, cool.
And it follows a young go-kart program in Italy.
Okay.
So it's going behind the scenes to see the early stages of what could become a journey to Formula One.
Wow.
It's a really interesting concept.
It is. I mean, it could capture that dedication, the raw talent, the competition that exists even at that early stage of motorsports.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
It is now, the BBC is developing a comedy drama called Just Act Normal.
Okay.
And it's about a group of Black working-class siblings in Birmingham who are all keeping this big secret from each other.
Okay.
It sounds like a blend of humor and heart.
Yeah, and I think we need more stories that represent the diverse experiences of different communities. And this one sounds like it has the potential to offer a really relatable portrayal of family life with both comedy and some genuine emotion.
Yeah, so let's wrap things up by touching on some highlights from Series Mania and Hot Docs.
Okay.
The Series Mania 2025, it generated a lot of discussion about the future of the industry. There was this feeling that maybe the huge streaming boom we've seen is starting to level off a little bit.
Yeah, there's definitely a sense of recalibration happening. And some of the key themes that emerged were the increasing importance of co-productions.
Yeah.
The need for local content that can travel.
Right.
The challenges of funding productions, the fragmentation of audiences.
So many different platforms now.
So many platforms. And of course, AI is everywhere.
It is.
But despite all of these challenges, people seem to be pretty optimistic.
Yeah.
About the power of collaboration and creative storytelling.
Yeah, Beta Film acquired the global rights to a crime thriller series called Cecily Mars at Series Mania.
Oh, wow.
And there was a whole range of other really ambitious TV series from around the world.
Like what?
There was Mussolini, Sound of the Century, there was Kabul, there was the Deal War of the Kingdoms,
Wow.
S-Line, Karim, Black Doves. It was a lot.
That's incredible. It just shows the global ambition of television storytelling.
It does.
And despite the challenges, creators around the world are pushing boundaries to deliver compelling stories.
And it was great to see Quentin Lee present at Series Mania with Morning Paris, and to hear about his upcoming comedy Invasion the Third project.
I love that.
Yeah, it's a fantastic initiative to highlight diverse voices in comedy.
Absolutely. And showcasing these diverse perspectives is so important.
Right.
And Quentin Lee's doing great work.
He is. And James Norton was there, too, talking about his move into producing.
Cool.
And his commitment to championing new voices in the industry.
It's nice to see actors transitioning into those producing roles because they have so much experience and they often have this real passion for shaping the kinds of stories that get told and giving opportunities to new voices.
Right. And as we mentioned earlier, the formation of those collaborative alliances like the European Alliance and New 8 was a big topic at Series Mania.
Right.
It's a key strategy for these broadcasters to compete with the big global streamers.
It is. And they want to create high-quality dramas that can really stand alongside the offerings of those global platforms, but still retain their own cultural identities.
Exactly. And just a quick note about Hot Docs 2025. The opening film was Parade. Queer Acts of Love and Resistance.
Oh, cool.
There were so many films from around the world premieres. It was a real celebration of documentary filmmaking.
Yeah, and Hot Docs is so important because it gives a platform to these diverse perspectives.
Yeah.
And allows filmmakers to use the power of documentary to inform and provoke and inspire.
Yeah. And one more thing to mention. Cubbins Middleton, she starred in a horror drama film called Blood Cruise.
Oh, wow.
That premiered at Series Mania.
Interesting.
So there was some genre crossover happening.
Cool. Okay, so some executive moves and industry initiatives. Eli Baldridge was promoted to executive VP at A. Smith & Co. Productions.
Congratulations.
Foxtel and Brawley are launching a channel dedicated to Australian screen classics.
That's great.
The Academy's Nickel Fellowships are partnering with The Blacklist and Stage 32 to create a talent pipeline for screenwriters.
That's fantastic.
Leslie Jones has signed with Odenkirk Proviciero Entertainment.
Good for her.
Benijay France is merging Shine Fiction and Benijay Studios France.
Makes sense.
Cohen Media Group acquired the North American rights to a film called Unicorns.
Okay.
And the Sean Connery Youth Talent Lab has opened applications for young filmmakers in Scotland.
That's great.
It's a lot happening.
It is a lot happening.
And all of these moves really contribute to the evolution and the reshaping of the industry.
Yeah.
It's from nurturing new talent to preserving history to adapting to new business models.
And it's all happening at the same time.
It is.
So as we come to the end of this deep dive, it's clear that this global media landscape is so dynamic, so interconnected, and it's always changing.
It never stops.
We've seen the complexities of these international co-productions. We've talked about AI. We've seen the power of storytelling.
Yeah.
So here's a question for you, the listener. As these lines between global reach and the need for local content continue to blur, what do you think is the key to creating truly impactful entertainment experiences in this ever-changing world?
That's a big question.
It is. It's something to think about.
Something to ponder.
And on that note, I think we're done.
I think so.
You are now equipped with a solid overview of some of the biggest developments happening in TV, film, and media.
You got it.
I hope you enjoyed this deep dive. We hope it sparked your curiosity and gave you a clear picture of what's happening both behind the scenes and on our screens. So go forth and stay informed.
Stay curious.
And we'll see you next time for another deep dive.
Bye.